Well, let's begin. Greetings and welcome to everybody. Welcome to this week's Future Trends Forum. I'm so glad to see you here. My name is Brian Alexander. I'm the forum's creator, host, and chief cat herder, and I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. We have a great topic with some fantastic guests, and I bet you will all have many, many questions and many ideas. So, before we proceed, let's take a look at the forum and let's explain where it came from and how it works and how the technology works. So, to begin with, you should know the forum is a discussion based platform. What I'm doing here right now with a slide just for a minute, we're going to get that out of the way. The whole idea of the supermajority of our hour is conversation between you and our guests. Now, that came out of a non conversation oriented work, the Future Trends in Technology and Education report. That's a monthly trends analysis that takes a look at the major forces reshaping education and technology. That includes forces from demographics to economics to enrollment to educational technology itself. If you haven't seen that before, go to ftte.us. You can download some sample issues and subscribe, either yourself or as an institution. Now, the FTTE report and also the Future Trends Forum are together part of a broader project called the Future of Education Observatory. If you haven't seen that, just go to futureofeducation.us because that's the umbrella header, including the forum, including the report, including a blog, including a bookstore, including a book club, including more stuff to come. So that's right now a participatory, open, ongoing, and very, very social way to try to grapple with where education is headed. Now, we can only go further by describing and thanking the people who have supported us. And so we'd like to begin first by thanking NYSERNet in New York State. This is a non-for-profit that helps that state's colleges and universities not only get online with broadband internet, but also to use those networks for some really exciting purposes. They do terrific professional development, and we're really grateful to them for their support. We're also really grateful to Shindig because, as you can tell, Shindig makes available this technology we're using right now. So let me just walk you through it a little bit for those of you who are new to it or for those who haven't seen it for a while. So different parts of the screen do different things. Where I am right now and where this slide is just for a minute, it's called the stage. And it's called the stage because everybody can see and hear everything that goes on up here. And you can join us. And I'll show you how to do that. Now, right below us, you'll see dozens and dozens of icons, each representing a single person or assignment. So you can see, for example, Ray Stone or Meg Dickerson. And if you like, you can click on them. And if they want to talk to you, your two icons can click together. You'll have your own private audiovisual bubble, which is pretty neat. Now, if you'd like to participate in our conversation today, there are actually three different ways of doing that. And let me show you where they all are. They're located at the bottom of the screen. There's a white strip running along it with a few different options. On the left edge are three buttons. The leftmost button, which has a number on it, 55, 57 right now, click on that and up will pop two boxes. Box on the left will give you a kind of film strip overview of everybody who's here, so you can mouse over them and learn more about them. On the right side is a chat box. And it's a basic text chat, and you can have conversations with everybody who's here. Everybody, that is, who's signed in with you. We usually divide that into groups of about 20 people or so. Now, back on that white strip, next to it, you'll see a raised hand icon. If you click on that, that tells us that you want to join us up here on stage. And all that involves is if your microphone is working, if your camera is working, if you're in a space where you can converse out loud, like I am now, just click on that. And when the time is ready, we'll beam you up here on stage. It's really easy to do. And next to that is another button. There's a question mark with a circle around it. You can click that, and up will pop a little box which lets you type in a comment or a question. So if you'd like to ask Maya and Emory, for example, what they think about the HoloLens, press that button, type it in, fire it off. And when the time is ready, I'll flash it on the screen for everyone to see, and then I'll read out loud so everyone can hear it. So that's a good thing to pick if you can't do video, either because your microphone doesn't work or because you don't have enough bandwidth or whatever. So chat box, the raised hand, or the question mark, these are all ways to participate within the Shindig platform. And if that's not enough, you can open another tab or another browser or another device over Twitter and just use the hashtag FTTE. And you'll see people asking questions, offering running notes, and adding more and more comments as we go. So those are all ways of participating. The whole goal of today is to have as much participation as possible. And we're really grateful to Shindig for giving us the technology to use to make that all possible. We're also really grateful to our supporters on Patreon. And if you don't know Patreon, it's a crowdfunding site, kind of like Kickstarter or GoFundMe, where people can support someone making something that they respect. In this case, it's us making this work on the future of higher education and technology. So if you go to patreon.com/Brian Alexander, you can see more than 115 people who contribute as little as $1 a month just to make sure that technology works and we can do all of this energetic progress. So we just want to thank people like Matthew Henry, Corey S., Bob Johnson, Michael Haggins, Kevin DeVries, Erwin DeVries, excuse me, Chris Law, wonderful people. And we're really grateful to all their supporters. Please join us there if you can. So that's who supports us. And that's how the technology works. That's where the forum came from, and that's how we like it to function. Now, let me introduce this week's guests. I am just absolutely delighted to welcome Maya Georgieva and Emory Craig. These are two long-standing friends of the Future Trends Forum. They've been with us since the beginning. They have offered us a great deal of participation, both as participants and as guests. They've been fantastic guests. And let me explain their background. Maya right now is a director for digital learning at the New School in New York, where she runs, among other things, a whole lab just devoted to mixed reality, virtual reality, augmented reality. Emory Craig, also in New York, is the director of e-learning and instructional technologies at the College of New Rochelle. Both of those are the founders of the Digital Bodies Consultancy. Together, they are the world's leading experts in education and virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. They're wonderful people. They're awfully kind. They're probably embarrassed at the number of compliments I beam their way. But I think you'll find them to be really open, really deeply thoughtful, incredibly experienced, and very inspirational. So let me just welcome both of them, and we beam them both up on stage. So first, we have Emory. Emory, can you hear and see us?
Yes, I can. Hello, Brian, and hello to everyone. Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. So good to see
And,
you.
and Maya just texted me that she was in the elevator and coming upstairs to the new school, so she should be on in just a couple of minutes. She was
Excellent.
doing a class teaching virtual reality, and it's a little hard to extract her from the metaverse, but we'll get her out of there. So,
Well, she's so busy. She does so much. Um,
right.
well, I have to ask Emory. First, I have to say thank you for making the
Well,
time.
thank you. All right.
I really appreciate this. And let me ask, looking ahead through the rest of 2019, just at the top level, where do you see mixed reality going? And if you want, if you do you want to define it before we dig in?
Yeah, I guess we can. I think most people these days probably know what it is, but happy to just do a quick definition. Augmented reality is just an overlay of digital artifacts on your environment. Virtual reality obviously encloses you entirely. Mixed reality is, as the term suggests, an interplay between those two. So you have the digital objects or artifacts, but you also have your real world environment, and you can have things, for example, hiding behind a digital object, hiding behind a chair, ducking under a table, so that it actually feels it's interacting with your environment. So it's different.
Mm,
It's a term that Microsoft actually didn't invent the term. The terms came up in the 1990s. There was a place called
mm,
Mixed Reality Labs, but then it kind of fell out of favor. And then with the kind of recent resurgence of VR and AR, Microsoft popularized it for their first version of HoloLens, and actually now they also use it for their VR headsets. I call them mixed
mm.
reality headsets, though technically they really are pretty much straightforward VR headsets. They're not mixed reality headsets. So there's a little confusion with the term, I think, but I think down the road we're going to end up with this terminology remaining fluid and then eventually coalescing into whether we call it XR or whatever else it may be. It's going to be something, but we haven't reached that point yet.
And there's a little blurring between these as well in practice.
Yeah, I think there is. Yeah, and you'll find people that refer to the Hololens as an advance in augmented reality. In
Mhm.
truth, one can say that, but it's more than an augmented reality headset. So you get some crossover here, which is not always helpful, but it is what it is. It's the world we live in these days, with a lot of fluidity in terms of the concepts and what we're working on.
Quite a bit of fluidity. Well, thank you for that definition. And
Sure.
friends, As we proceed, please feel free to sum up your questions and your comments regarding these technologies. So I'm about to ask Emory the giant stratosphere level question, but we'll dig into this particular detail as well. So just thinking ahead, we have about 10 months to go in 2019. Um,
Hmm.
where do you think we're going to end up with mixed reality by that? Will we all be will all humans be equipped with a Magic Leap headset, or will we first start having new games and new challenges to everyday life based on mixed reality, or where? Where do you see it's going?
Hey, here she is. She just showed up.
Hey,
I had to stop. Then I'll answer the question.
oh, perfect.
Hi, Brian.
Hello, Maya.
How are you? I just came from the metaverse.
Well, welcome back, far traveler.
Yes.
What are you sporting? Is that Magic Leap, or is it the new
Yeah, this is
HoloLens?
the Magic Leap. Um,
Oh, fantastic.
yeah, the Magic Leap, and which everybody's very excited about, and so is the HoloLens too, and all the things we're going to talk about in the hour.
Wow. And just to be completely banal for make sure we're all on the same page, you can see us well through the lenses.
Yeah, so it's basically these are just like glasses. They are transparent, and I can see through, and I can see other things floating in the air on top to just make it a little bit more whimsical.
Oh,
But
excellent.
yeah.
Oh, that's
She,
great.
she, she, she probably has like large goldfish floating in front of her on his screen. So,
It's a
You know,
much it's a much better way to kind of like think about work and create and do things. And um, I'm not going to wear them the whole time, but they are much lighter and easy to wear, and obviously you can do a number of things with them. It's not like the isolating experience of virtual reality, for example, and
oh,
it takes us on a different part of just understanding the world in a much more complex way.
yeah.
understanding the world in a much more complicated way. That's fantastic. Um, Maya, I just asked Emery the very simple question of where he thought mixed reality would be going in the next 10 months. And I was just wondering if the two of you wanted to bat at that question. This is the very top level before we drill
Hmm.
down.
Hmm.
What do you think?
Well, so the next 10 months I think will be very interesting, partly because we have Magic Leap 1 to play, and we have the Microsoft HoloLens 2, which was just released this weekend. But we're still in a rapid prototyping space, and especially when it comes to education, right? So we have a better tools that we can put, for better purposes. We also have a little bit of the social element is starting to emerge, a little bit more of the interactive element. Hands are getting in, but in terms of this is still something you can perhaps engage in a short periods of time. It heats up. In terms of just getting content in and out, it's a closed platform for the most part at the moment. Everybody's talking open, but realistically, those of us who are in university settings and thinking, creating, putting content on it, there is not a straight path to it. So we have to
Yeah.
recognize that.
Yeah.
But we're seeing better examples that serves us better in education. So I think, especially when it comes to mixed reality, we also now have two devices that are working fairly well. And that's these are good tools for us to really say, let's put our heads together. Let's kind of like get together on our campuses in our groups and think how we can leverage that. I think having the tools becoming available versus people bees just those being locked in industrial labs. And finally, just as my students
Mm,
here, it's basically the most important part is to put them in the hands of students in whatever way you can, whether
Yeah.
it's the HoloLens, whether it's Magic Leap,
Yeah.
whether this is not a tool that has to be rationalized or kind of like overly you know overly planning and overly designed for in behind closed doors. by a team of experts. This is, I think, a tool that you should invite. Sort of different parts of the campus, and that's one of the uniqueness. Being at the new school and the Parsons campus is exactly that. I try to bring our design students with our anthropology students, our theater and drama students with other with lighting design students, and they are the ones that actually bring such unique perspective in space. So that's where I think we are. We don't have 200 of those on campuses, and if somebody does it, honestly, you'll be locked into something which is likely to improve in a year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what one of the challenges here, of course, is these are early stage devices and they're expensive. I mean, it's not, to come back to your initial question, Brian, we're not going to see everyone walking around with these by the end of 2019, probably not even 2020. At $3,500 a pop, and Maya, what's Magic Leap is 1,500, 2,000, something like that.
23, yeah, 2,300.
Yeah, 23. I mean, we're not, until we get something down to a smartphone price point, it's just not going to take off in the larger sense. So, honestly, it's kind of interesting with what happened the other day in Barcelona with Alex Kipman, and company releasing HoloLens 2. Microsoft really kind of said, we're doing enterprise. That's it. I mean, HoloLens 1, when it first came out, they were kind of all over the place. They actually did a couple of very interesting immersive games. I think one was called Robo Raid or something like that, where you had robots bursting out of your walls and stuff. And it was really kind of immersive and fascinating. But, people were not going to spend $3,000 for a gaming platform. It was clear. And, where HoloLens 1 found traction was out in the field with workers and on the factory floor. And this time, when they did it the other day, they just threw themselves right into that, and they said, this is where we are. We're at enterprise. Now, they did show a couple of small educational examples. What they did, and what is interesting for higher ed, is medical. And they said this has huge potential for medical. So, anyone right now in an institution working with a hospital or teaching healthcare providers, HoloLens is going to factor in really large. But outside of that, it's going to stay a little bit of a niche product in terms of larger society, at least for this year, I think.
So this takes us to the academic implications. You're saying that allied health is going to be one of the areas most likely to see this. And you also wonder, what about any engineering programs? You mentioned industrial uses.
Yeah. Oh, I think definitely engineering, and they were showing demos of that the other day at Barcelona. So I think we're going to see engineering schools who make a lot of use of it. But Magic Leap is kind of going in a different direction. I mean, they're talking a little bit of enterprise also, but Ronnie Ebowitz, their CEO, I think he's much more oriented towards storytelling and entertainment. And so they're really looking at taking that in a different direction. So you kind of got the two big players here sort of staking out their territory where they want to be, which again doesn't mean there won't be crossover down the road or that future devices by either one will cover the whole gamut. But for right now, they're saying this is our turf. This is what we can do well. And, and it's a fascinating set of developments at the moment.
It really is. And Microsoft also has the U.S. Army too, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, they do. Much to the chagrin of some of their employees recently, who have been writing letters saying we did sign up for this, but that is life. They do. I think it's a $480 million contract, and I suspect they're not going to be supplying the military with version 1 of HoloLens. I think it's going to be version 2. So,
and so
yeah, I would think.
Also think about campuses that have a military presence, either as small as ROTC or something as West Point. Or friends, this is please don't let me hog the mic. There's a ton of questions I want to ask. So if you want, remember, go down to the white strip of the screen and click the raised hand if you want to join Maya and Emory and I up here, and
or
click
come up on stage.
Exactly, the easy as can be. And before I say ask questions by using the question mark button. There are 2 questions. So let me beam one of these up here right now. Seth Fleischauer from Banyan Global says, on these AR devices, can someone record their experience or broadcast it to other viewers? Just trying to get around to having one-to-one devices. That's a great
Yes.
question.
That's a great question. I'm going to let Maya answer it because she's been doing it in the classroom. So
All
Oh, you
right.
drove her away. Look what you
I
did.
No, no,
drove her
no, no.
away. What do I do? I say let
This,
Maya
I
do it, and
have
she
to kind
runs
of keep
off.
between. So you can do this with the Microsoft HoloLens. You can actually cast, and we do that in our lab. In some cases it makes sense, especially when you're introducing people. And I'm pretty sure that the tool will work in the next version, if not better. There, you can also record with this. There is no way to cast with this today, but it's one of the most requested features. As a matter of fact, I have a couple of students that are trying to hack it.
Of course.
So we are trying, sort of but there's no direct line the way it is for the HoloLens, which
Yeah.
is being helpful to us. But you can record very easily with Magic Leap.
Right, but it
Magic
doesn't
Leap
do
actually,
live playback. Yeah.
No?
a little light, sort of a red light, will light up to kind of let others know that you're recording. It's very similar to the way actually Google Glass used to do and other devices.
Sure.
So recording with this, it's easy. Of course, some of you may be thinking a little bit more like showcase, sharing more experiences and some of the demos you've seen, perhaps from the industry partners. Those are actually post-production, superimposed with green screen. So, and that is being a little bit like the critique on the HoloLens, because people, even our students, they see, when we introduce things, they come to our lab and it's like, it's not working. And I'm like, no, it's the field of view. They're like, it's not working. I'm only seeing, sort of the narrow field of view.
Right.
And, if they had previewed this from a video, the expectation is, this is going to, take over my world.
Yeah. I mean,
Better, but not quite.
yeah, Microsoft has developed a really incredible and innovative camera rig to do live cast from HoloLens and of somebody on stage using it. But when you actually step into it, it is not the same. They got a lot of blowback for that with version 1 with a 30-something degree field of view. Because as Maya said, it's like a little box and you're looking at a hologram in that, turn your head a little bit and the hologram disappears. They almost doubled the field of view with HoloLens 2, but just the other day they got blowback again for exaggerating the extent of the field of view. So it's still not as much as they're sort of portraying it as, but it's better. It's up where Magic Leap is now, 50-something percent, close to 60%, which is better. I mean, we really need to get, our VR headsets are 110, 120 degree field of view, which is actually narrow, but we need to get up to them before we at least have something that feels, I think, really immersive, where you're not like, oh, it's disappearing out of my eyesight, even though I can still look in that direction. So
what's the normal human field of view? Is it 180 or is it narrower than
something
that?
a little bit more actually. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, very wide. If you ever try the Pimax VR headset, it does have like a 200 degree, 190 degree field of view, and it is absolutely breathtaking because you actually, for the first time, you realize that you can look at something in the headset through your peripheral vision and not turn your head to see it. And actually, I think that whole thing of having to turn our heads while we're wearing VR headsets actually is one of the things that makes using VR tiring, because in real life, we're constantly judging what's going on around us without actually looking at it. It's our brains putting it all together, because our high def view is only directly in front of us, but our brains very nicely create the world for us, and we don't have to turn and look at everything directly. So we'll get there down the road, but it's, I know.
We have a question that has come up here. Let me bring to the stage Warren Blythe, coming from Oregon State University.
Hello, I hope you can hear me.
We can. Hello, Warren.
Okay. Howdy. All right, I'll throw my question out here. Curious what your perspectives might be on emerging privacy invasions that the tech enables. The inside-out tracking in Magic Leap, HoloLens, Oculus Quest. is 3D mapping the room and the people around us, and it's often sending that data back to the cloud to process, in theory. So I feel like everybody's really excited about the tracking that we're getting, but I'm curious how we're going to handle these emerging privacy invasions with
there's
eye tracking
and there's tracking, right? Yeah.
It just feels like everybody's like, yeah, that's going to be a problem. It's like, yeah, but we need to do something. and I don't know. I don't have any solutions. I'm just curious if you guys have a perspective on it.
I would say number one, I have a lot of perspectives on it. We both do, but I would say this is a conversation we really need to have in higher education. And we did a discussion circle just the other week at EDUCAUSE at the annual meeting. We had a packed room, and we could have gone on for much longer than we did. And the ethical issues here are immense, and particularly as it's starting to come out now with, as you say, with the eye tracking and HoloLens 2, because it's fascinating. You can actually interact with the world through your gaze, which is just breathtaking. On the other hand, Alex Kipman from Microsoft has intimated that down the road, HoloLens 2 will possibly be able to determine your emotions by the way your eyes are focused. And if that kind of data is going back up to the cloud, as you say, and it's a very good point, who owns my data about my emotions, and where else does it go? I mean, Facebook has a long track record of taking everything that we do and spreading it around the world and using it for their own benefit. And if you go back to the original Oculus terms of service, when the Oculus Rift came out, as I always say to people, we never would have let another device like that on our campuses, which basically said we can track your body movements. Now, all under the interest of improving Oculus Rift. But, it's like we brought anything else in here, we'd be going ballistic over that. But because it's Oculus Rift, everybody says, oh, terms of service, whatever, on we go. Isn't it a novel device? This is a debate and a discussion that we have to have, and I think we have to have it early on, because it's only early in the process of an emerging media that we can really shape it. 5 or 10 years from now, the standards are going to be set, and we're going to live with whatever we got. So now is the time to raise these issues, to push back on vendors if we're not happy with what's being done, as there was pushback on Oculus and the terms of service. And it's going to be up to us in higher education to do this, because it's not going. I don't think it's going to happen elsewhere. We're the perfect venue for that. So,
yeah.
Thank you. It is the question.
Yeah, we don't have a legal framework, and as usually happens, law catches up to technology.
Yeah.
There's no code of ethics for VR, and some people are arguing the same code of ethics should apply as it is in the real world, because we actually, VR or MR or XR, because we should look into these when we put our students through these experiences. We should really think about them as human experience and as memory.
And they are. They are. They absolutely are human experience.
The further along we go on the continuum, the more those are things that will become part of your existence. So the less there will be a line between certain things that you experience in the real world and the physical world, and and the digital world.
Yeah, and what I don't want to see is, starting a year or a couple years from now, all of the immersive tech vendors doing what Mark Zuckerberg has done with Facebook, which is go on an annual apology tour. Oh, we shouldn't have done this. We're going to rethink this. You're right. This needs to change. And then next year, lo and behold, we have to do the apology tour yet again, because we've again deceived people into what based on what we were doing. So.
Yeah, no, staying engaged in this conversation is very critical.
Yeah.
Bringing it up on your campus. We've been trying to also bring it up in other venues, because, as Emory said, catching up to this, it's going to be brutal.
Yeah, it is. And I think EDUCAUSE wants to be involved in this. I've had some conversations with them, and I think that they also want to help out on this, because we need, it's great that we really need to have these conversations on the campus, but we also need to have them in larger forums, including with you, Brian, here in Future Trends Forum. So, there's lots of places.
I'm so glad we are. And Warren, thank you very much for the terrific question.
Yeah, thank you.
It was Warren from Oregon. Again, you can see, by the way, that's how easy it is to bring them up on stage, which I will do right now with yet another fine person. So I'm trying to beam up. This is Amy Pate, who was at Arizona State University. Hello, Amy. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Hi, Emory. Hi, Maya.
Hi, Amy.
Hey, so my question is that generally speaking, we've got the VR goggles at ASU. We've found a way in order to get them to our students through loans at the bookstore. Our
Right?
biggest challenge that we have is with developing content, in that our faculty have some terrific ideas for using these VR headsets in the classroom. But to get those simulations and ideas developed, we seem to be hitting kind of the challenge of not having the resources financially, not having
It is a challenge.
the know-how in terms of developers. So I guess I was just curious, what do you think is going to be coming along in the timeline for that?
Oh, great question.
That's a
Thank you,
wonderful
Amy.
question. And hi, Amy. It's great to see you again. So we'll be out at ASU fairly soon. So,
Oh, good.
yeah.
I mean, I
My,
think that there's kind of two ways you approach this. I think at this point, and one is the approach of we are going to develop something locally, which requires to build a team around that and the right skill set. And we don't have, on many campuses, we don't have because this is a completely different skill set compared to what it is to manage systems or learning spaces or cloud. Or, like, it's actually a much different skill set. Um, the other approach is to partner, right? Partnerships, and you have one partnerships with Labster and so others, and where the content can be co-create, kind of like basically something that can be leveraged within programs, somewhat co-created in some other ways. Um, and then the third one is students as
yeah,
creators.
that's true.
And I, as I already know, I'm a big believer in that approach because I think that essentially that we want to be make this in to make the use of this in education. We need to make it a collaborative, a social, and a rich experience, and some experience that actually students can create and basically engage with.
Yeah.
So I think that different campuses are approaching this differently. For some campuses, and particularly obviously in the medical field or in some of the STEM disciplines and others, where there's subject expertise models that lend themselves to be presented in 3D, in visual or remote, like what something will become now sort of that you can remote kind of like sync with others through the Microsoft HoloLens and provide instructions. So uh, these are, um, these are ways that it can be leveraged. But creating experiences on campuses is a different timeline. And it is and it's also it's an experience which you have to approach with the multiple stakeholders, lots of prototyping. For my project that I just actually recently kind of showcased, the projects here at Parsons, the fashion study collection in virtual reality, we went into three different iterations to even kind of like understand the process we want to follow. And then once you kind of have this point in the process, you actually had to see, well, how do we scale this up? And in our case, we have 4,000 assets that we have to think about. This is a project timeline that it's a digital humanities type project. So it's very good. It's better to approach this in a smaller nuggets and in series. And I was just in the Magic Leap headset like earlier this week because they released one of the collaboration that they did with Star Wars in the LMX lab. And what they've done is these experiences that are literally, about several minutes long. And it's a serial content that will be released and,
Yeah.
kind of move you along through the storyline or move you along to the experience. And so I would suggest that this is really a great model that rather than, embarking on a really large content creation, which could be with partners, to think about these opportunities where it really makes 3D makes sense, where volume makes sense, where space, where presence makes sense, and get them down to actually nuggets of 3 to 5 minutes
Yeah.
interactions.
Doesn't have to be a long experience. Yeah,
Right.
doesn't. Yeah, and I think Maya's right about, leveraging student expertise here. A lot of students do know Unity, do know Unreal Engine, and but it is a challenge. I mean, I was out at Grinnell College in the fall, and it was just amazing because there were so many different departments working on immersive projects. But faculty are doing some of the heavy lifting themselves, and they were bringing in students to, for their expertise in coding, and that's just the way we have to deal with this right now. I don't have the data, but I think that it's probably easier in some respects if one is working in the medical field, just because there are funding agencies that are willing to work with to say a higher education institution goes to a hospital and says they both want to do something for that hospital to get grant money from an agency, healthcare, particularly children's health or something like that. So it's a lot more money to then go out and just hire the developers that you need. It's more challenging in the social sciences and the humanities, isn't it always, Brian? when it comes to this, it just is. Where we are struggling to get the money to do this because people want the innovation, but then have to realize there's a lot more that comes with this. Just as I think we all went through this back in the early days of technology taking off when everybody wanted to be online and no one thought about what it was going to cost to do infrastructure. These days, we kind of just swallow those costs and we say that's part of doing business in higher education. Well, it's going to be part of doing business in terms of immersive technology, but there's a kind of a sea change there, perspective that I don't think we've fully embraced yet. So.
Well, that's a fantastic answer from both of you. And thank you, Amy, so much for that great question.
Thank you for a great question. Yeah. The other thing, if I could just add one more thing to this, which is to say,
Please.
Content production will get a lot easier. It really will. I mean, that if you look at what has happened to website development from the good old days of Front Page and Dreamweaver to, you can have a web page in 5 minutes these days, with WordPress, that's going to happen with immersive technologies too. But that's a little bit down the road.
WordPress for MR. Well, speaking of fantastic uses for the technology, I'm just absolutely delighted to bring Carolyn Coward on stage because as a lifelong space geek, she's at JPL, the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Oh, okay.
And she's a librarian. So, Carolyn, welcome.
There you go. You have it. Not the one that's up in space, right? in the space station.
This has been debugged and planetary protection protocols are in place.
Good.
Planetary protection protocols.
So I wanted to go back to what Amy was talking about development. And again, back 15, 20 years ago, before we thought of loaning or giving laptops and tablets to our students, they were sort of the emerging technology. We were worried about how to pay for it and how to get it into the hands of students because workplaces had it sort of standardized. And I agree, this is it. This is here. This is right now. We do need to get these into the hands of students. How do you pay for these? They're $3,500 a pop. I'm the head of the JPL library, and we have 2 of these that we loan out with our our library of things, sort of a technology sandbox.
Right.
We pay for and loan out as much new and emerging technology as we can so people can just come in and play with them. And we have all kinds of developers here who are anxious to get their hands on these, not just the folks working on the flight projects who are given these things so they can collaborate with colleagues in Australia and Japan and Belarus or wherever they are. But they can develop in-house applications as well. We're really excited to have these, and we're just really blessed and fortunate that I had the budget to buy 2 of these when they were available. The campus analog, the university analog, although is difficult, I'm wondering if these can be paid for with grants, NSF, or some kind of outside grant funding organization for a particular project. You can also place these in faculty development centers for the faculty and the staff to come in and use and play with. throw maybe some graduate engineering students at these as a project to develop software, develop
Right.
applications. It would be really great. I can see this like on Invite Parents Day and on, Welcome Students Day, to have parents and students take a virtual or augmented reality tour through the campus or through their
Right.
dorms
Or through what students are learning. Yeah. Yeah,
Exactly.
you're
Yeah,
absolutely
I
right.
think we kind of been, Emran and I, and I think this is not our first appearance at the forum and this conversation, but we always have said you have to create the hub. You have
Yeah.
to create
Yeah.
the space, and it's really important because one, it is it's an emerging technology, so there is some barriers to that, and just these headsets are expensive. Just getting them on and limit sort of removing any anxiety in terms of how do I get started and get them started in a fun way is one of the ways to
And
go.
they
So I
wreak
know,
havoc on your hair. Really.
yeah, it's definitely
Actually, that's
Maybe I need
HoloLens is
one.
actually pretty good on the hair compared to
Yeah,
some of the
these are only about
devices.
a pound and a half. They do get a
Yeah.
little heavy. I've walked around with one of these. I've done like Mars rovers and gone to Jupiter on one of these.
Right.
They're really
Oh,
cool.
no.
But yeah,
I know.
after about an hour, your neck starts to hurt. So the next version is going to be lighter and tighter and meaner and almost ubiquitous. You won't even know you're wearing it after a while. Although I
Right.
do want to go
That's it.
back to the point you guys were talking about earlier about privacy, ethics, monitoring who you are, where you are, your facial gestures. I'm a very demonstrative person. I don't want anybody monitoring what my eyebrows are doing. Really, that would get really scary. So I mean, I'm bullish about merging
Yeah.
humanities and STEM. The National Academies came out with their report last year that's crucial to have humanities and STEM merged, ethics and history, so we don't wind up in a dystopian universe. Having said that, things are good at JPL and we're going to Mars again.
excellent. No,
That's true. Definitely.
one of my first pieces on the HoloLens was indeed, the making of the new rover, and and scientists being able to beam up from different parts of the world and work on this project. And I think that's exactly the future, and that's
Yeah, that
the
is.
fun of mixed reality. That it just so much. It just puts this extra layer of information and engagement, and you can connect with people in the sense of presence is just so engaging.
Right.
But I think that I think what's good is that we see on campuses that people are having it, whether it's the makerspace or the hub, and things are happening. And I want to acknowledge that because I know that lots of you here, even who are participating, have kicked something off on your campus, and that has been actually some of the great things to see. Somebody like me who's
Most
been
campus libraries have maker spaces. Well, not
They
most. A
do.
lot of
Yep.
campus libraries have maker
so
spaces. So
it's
that's a perfect alignment if they want to loan
It
out
absolutely is.
or
Yeah.
just have people come in and play with
Come in
them
to
in
use it.
kind of a
Yeah.
closed environment.
Yep, because they don't need to come in and play with the technology these days because everyone's walking around with so much technology in terms
True.
of laptops, iPads, stuff like that.
Phones,
But to
yeah.
go back to your point, Carolyn, which I think was good, and maybe we'll see this in another year or two, back in the old days and even at college in New Rochelle, we used to have a laptop program. We had
Yep.
students coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, and we were basically handing out laptops at the beginning of their freshman year. It was built into the pricing structure. They had it for 4 years. They could walk away with it if they wanted after 4 years for like $1 or something like that because it was under a lease arrangement. And, as the prices of this come down, I think we're going to see that. Why we stopped the program at one point is because the freshmen started coming in and saying, I don't want your laptop. I have my own.
And
I
it's
just
better
got
than
one.
what you're offering.
Right. And it's better, or I like it because I like this brand. I don't want that one. And so we looked at each other and said, well, okay, we can't do that anymore. But I think we're at the stage now with immersive tech where it would be helpful to say, let's just build this into a specific program.
We're in the lab stage.
We're in the lab
Carolyn,
stage, yeah.
thank you so much for the fantastic
Yeah,
question.
great question. Yeah.
Thank you. We have a whole series of questions that are bubbling up. And Maya and Emory, it's wonderful hearing from you on this because of your enormous experience. We have a question that came from Patty Jennings, who couldn't make it, but she wants to know, how do you address federally mandated ADA compliance with
Oh,
student
Oh
content?
God. Oh
I
dear.
mean, look, this is, this is again, every time you talk about VR, accessibility and ADA comes up. But honestly, while there are projects in the works, and while we believe that these projects will actually improve things, improve for
In
a
the long
number
run.
in the long
Yep.
run, the reason something that is ready and working today, what is ready is working is the approaches that we've taken with other media, meaning that, how do you translate video, how do you translate sound, how do you translate sort of in the context of somebody special need, and basically that's how you need to look into that. And some of the components in this one being hands-on are not easily transferable necessarily, but again, what we've seen is that all of the tech companies, Google, Facebook, Samsung, what everybody is being engaged of saying, we
HP.
want HP, we want to make sure that this is technology that everybody can access.
Yep. And
um,
I was just going to say, and it's up to us in higher education to hold vendors' feet to the fire here. They all are making progress on this, but they can do more, and they're going to do more if we say you have to do more, because we have an obligation to our students, more obligation.
Yeah, every time you engage with some of these companies, you basically have to make the case, just as
Yeah.
we have made it very clear. It is just this week I had a student with special needs in our lab, and we are doing, we're doing virtual reality, and obviously there's headset all around and everything. This wasn't necessarily a visual disability or anything, but as we approach this conversation, because yes, those of you who are teaching VR, this should be ethics, and should be part of the conversation. It's not
Gotta be
just
part.
about thinking; it's
Yeah.
about thinking about our future as human beings.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
the level, as we kind of move into sort of reach that point of the discussion, that student who basically participated in, like just, I mean, so much energy of, expressing how much he believes that this will improve things for
Hmm.
him and others in similar situation. And so seeing that was
Hmm.
just perhaps, how much we need to work on that.
Yeah, we really do. Yeah.
We
So
can't go
thanks
back
for
from
that
that. Huh?
question. Yeah. Yep.
We
Definitely.
have that's a
Yeah.
terrific question, and we have a few other questions on screen just to bring these up really quickly because I'm a little conscious of time here.
Time. Right.
Yep, Thomas Tobin has a really good question. In fact, he just saw you, Maya, and he references you. He says, "I experienced the HoloLens at ELI last week. I'm curious to hear Maya's wish list for applications or scenarios for higher ed, given her students' attempts to hack the hardware." Good question.
Wow. Yeah, well, we stay late, and we try to hack everything. I think that's the name
All
of it.
right.
Wish list. I'm very interested, and I will recommend. It's not exactly a wish list, but I am really interested into intersection of art and STEM,
Yeah.
humanities and STEM. And so I'm really, I am not, to be completely honest, like in the last 5 years, I've reviewed a number of medical applications, and I have said to Emory that the rest of the medical experiences he should review, because my heart sinks to these cards. And if the hardest experience, heart attack, I feel I'm going to be it, because my presence is, they're getting better, what I'm saying. But I feel like what we are with that, we're in a moment of a little bit of a copy, kind of trying to improve the copy that we've seen.
Yeah.
Meaning that we also the anatomy experiences, the anatomy atlas in VR on MR, and I see a lot around that. And some of these projects will find will unlock something that the other projects did not. And I think we're learning from it. So I will not discourage that. I encourage you, but I encourage you to kind of like try to unlock additional moments for your students or within your context. But for me, I think the wish list is, I say, if you are in a STEM school, try to see how you bring the art and design and humanity. If you are actually working in the more humanities kind of in that context, try to think where does technology play a role. And I think that those are the projects that kind of give a lot of interesting context and a lot of interesting direction for us to work with, as opposed to focusing in, we need to create, something in physics, the 3D module. And they work, they're great. And I've many times said, this is a great jumping point because in terms of just transferring that model to a novice. But if you wanna kind of move beyond just of that sort of tried and tested, it's possibly thinking in disciplinary.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you. A great question and a fantastic answer, of course. We have a question from Chris. I don't think we brought this up so far. This is a really interesting approach. Chris asks, what do you think of VR instructors? That is, instructors teaching remotely through VR. And so I think with VR, we can also include mixed reality here too as well.
Mixed reality, right.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah. We have some social VR platforms right now. For the most part, they're very rudimentary. But they're developing quite rapidly. And I think we're going to I think down the road in the not too distant future, this is going to utterly transform online learning. Because we're going to get rid of this whole debate, issue we have about instructors being present in discussion forums, or how we do videos and like that. Because instructors will be able to meet with students in remote settings. We can do that already. The technology is there. It's just that the technology needs to get better. And it will. It's like leapfrogging ahead, and the avatars are getting better, and that really does make a difference. I mean, even if we're not visual learners, we're visual beings. We're a visual species, and it's strange when you're just looking at a floating head in a room. It's better when there's an entire body there, and it's better yet when there's hand movements. And if you look at Facebook's development of avatars over the past 18 to 24 months, it's actually been pretty remarkable. I think give it another 24 months, another couple of years, and we're going to see the rollout of, collaborative online learning spaces, of instructors using VR to teach students, and it's going to be a remarkable development.
Wow, so much for that. Much for that. We have a couple more questions, and we're racing against the clock right now.
I know we are.
Eric Mystery has with the best name of the day.
Yes, you really do.
A great question, which is, how do we balance technical skills needed to build experience with the subject matter expertise to build viable educational experiences?
Yes. So that's why you need so much prototyping. And it starts with everybody on the table. Really, that's the key. And you need experienced designers and people who understand space and people who understand the subject matter and people who taught the subject matter and been in these spaces. So it is basically a much more diverse team, and then bringing students and faculty. And I think it's the truth thing is the balancing. It shouldn't be just technical plus instructional designer. That is usually a recipe for creating something that is a direct translation of the things we know that work well, because we know that they work well in other contexts, which other media contexts. So I would say, the balance is to make sure you bring people from these other skill sets, whether it's audio, interaction, experience, into sort of the team early on, and you supplement with students at any point. If you don't have it if you don't have it in the sort of in your team professional, bring
Students.
the students in.
Get it in, right. But it's also really good to just bring together people from different backgrounds, the technical background and the subject matter expertise. Just very quickly, I was talking to an architecture professor at Yale the other month, and he was expressing his frustration that architecture students so often only talk to other architecture students. But when they go out in the world as architects, they're not going to talk to a lot of other architects. They're going to talk to everybody but. They're going to talk to engineers, city planners. They're going to talk to the public, to people that are building owners, and so this is a wonderful educational opportunity to bring people together from different backgrounds and to help them bridge that gap now in higher education.
Nice.
And think that these things work together. Like, I think that to a little bit to the question before, like the VR instructor. Absolutely, this will happen. We have social VR, we need 5G. But I would like if that instructor is going to come to me to be Einstein. If I would like the engage. That it's not just another something that we can do in other ways and in other platforms. It has to have a real reason and bring another dimension to this. And so I think that that's the other thing. Don't think about this that this has to be the teaching content. Think about this within the experience of teaching moments that we create on our campuses. So that's why I say, just it's not necessarily always something that you need. The learning objective may be happening in the expanded use of this between using a discussion and various other modalities that play into the educational experience.
Nice. We have one more question I want to sneak in under the wire. And this is coming from the splendid Kate Borowski. And just for you, Kate, we have Maya Donning, the Magic Leap. She says, I'm working on introducing VR to my campus. I'm focusing on existing content rather than creation. Have there been any discussion about including VR experiences in OR repositories, i.e. sharing?
There is actually there's a lot of interest in sharing. We don't have standards yet. There are people in the tech industry who are trying to kind of who are starting to have that conversation about openly sharing and also being able to how we preserve that thing, which for me actually has become now all right. Even the next question is when the students create something or we create something, where does it live and how does others access it? We don't have the answers yet. The truth is that it's that we're working through. We're working through those answers.
And it's obviously part of a larger debate in higher education about sharing resources. And there's still a great segment of it that says we're going to roll our own and we put the money into this and it's only for our faculty and our students as opposed to releasing it to the world. And hopefully this will trigger some more open sharing on this. But as Maya said, we really do need standards for that too. So,
and we'll try and push for that here.
Let's do.
Here's a question that looks a little ahead, and this will be our final question. This is a really, really practical from Jessica Sullivan, not too far from you at NYU. She asks, where can you recommend for 2019 conferences or other exciting forums, in person or online, where we can continue not only the content innovation, but also the ethics development issues?
So, I'm going to have to start, Brian, we can have a forum on ethics. If you agree, we can come back.
I'm ready.
Do the ethics. As I said, Emory and I would just return and had just the most engaged discussion on that, that we
at EOI. Yep.
It's kind of hard to see 100 people as engaged as it happened last week in California. So in terms of conferences, there are conferences that are coming. There's a conference iLearn. Was it iLearn?
Yeah, iLearn is coming up. Yeah.
In June, and they have a number of different tracks on VR and AR. Feel free to also reach me directly. It's these lists are easier to transfer, I think, a little bit by email. So for anyone, Maya at newschool.edu. It's MAYA at newschool.edu. And I'm happy to share. There is going to be a gaming and entertainment conference at Yale in June. There's the Games for Change conference at the New School in Parsons here at the New School as well. There is
SIGGRAPH is starting to address these issues.
They should.
Yeah.
They should.
Yep.
And a little bit more like sort of the faculty whom I invested in media art and design.
Yeah.
I would
It's a
say
good group.
there is less education and more on the creatives part.
Yeah, but it's a really good group with great technical skills, and of course EDUCAUSE too. So I think it's going to come up at EDUCAUSE in annual conference this fall, right?
I mean,
But
IOC, both IOC and EDUCAUSE at certain parts have tackled, nuggets of this conversation. But I think that the digital, I've seen it also part of digital humanities. As people are now starting to build these projects. As I said, happy to also share more on email.
Yeah, and you can reach out to us. We have a contact form on digitalbodies.net. You can reach out to us there if you hear of stuff, or just ask us, and we'll see if we can get some stuff posted a little bit, because there really is a growing interest in this. And maybe if we just do an article just on what's coming up for 2019, early 2020 would be good. So.
That'd be great. Happy to share that.
We also on our Twitter account, we do share and reshare opportunities, and some of them are for students and some of them are for faculty and stuff. So on the Twitter feed, you can also see opportunities kind of shared for participating.
Well, it's because Maya and Emory have been guests and participants so often, they know that's how we end every session, is we ask, how can we keep up with your work? And you just told us. So we have digitalbodies.net, which is the best website on earth for VR, AR, and mixed reality and education. We know how to find you, too, on Twitter. And hopefully soon we can find you in the metaverse. Listen, we are past the end of the hour, so I have to show everybody what's coming up next. But before I do that, let me just thank you both so much for a fantastic glimpse into where mixed reality is headed.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having us, and it's always great to talk to everyone that shows up here on the Future Trends Forum. Absolutely.
Well, people had great questions, so thank you all.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Keep them coming.
Well, don't leave yet, friends, because we have to just point out to where we're going next. So next week, we actually do not have a forum session, because next Thursday, I'm going to be doing an aircraft flying across the Pacific Ocean. I'd much rather be doing the Future Trends Forum than that, but these things can't be avoided sometimes. We'll resume the Thursday after that. In the meantime, we're going to put up the vote for our next book club reading. We have the bookstore ready there for you. We, of course, have all of our social media conversations ready and waiting and starting to happen. So let me thank you all very much for your questions, for your comments, for this overall collective glimpse of the future, for where mixed reality could be heading higher education. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.